Jack's pickaxe struck the stone with a dull echo, the sound swallowed by the endless dark of the mine. His arms ached, his back screamed, and yet he kept swinging, each strike more out of stubbornness than hope. He wasn't here because he loved the work. He was here because he had no choice. The colony paid in scraps, and Jack needed every scrap to keep his tiny shack heated and stocked with rations. Mining was survival. Nothing more. But tonight, something was different. His drill sensors had picked up a strange density beneath the rock, something layered, something unnatural. Curiosity gnawed at him, even though miners who strayed off course often ended up buried alive. Jack didn't care. The official mines yielded nothing but dust and exhaustion. He wanted something more, even if he didn't know what. Hours passed as he chipped away, until finally his pick struck something that rang like metal. The sound was sharp and clear, unlike the muffled crunch of ordinary stone. Jack froze, sweat dripping down his brow. Carefully, he cleared away the surrounding rock, until his lamp revealed a surface, smooth, dark, and veined with glowing blue lines. It looked like stone, but it pulsed faintly, like veins under skin. "What the hell are you?" Jack whispered. His instincts told him to stop. His gut told him he was breaking into something forbidden. But Jack had never listened to his gut before, and he wasn't about to start now. He pressed the drill against the glowing surface and squeezed the trigger. The machine screamed, sparks flying as the bit dug in. For a moment it seemed unbreakable, but then the glow brightened, cracks spreading outward like a spiderweb. The cavern shuddered. Dust rained from the ceiling. Jack cursed and tried to pull back, but it was too late. With a thunderous crack, the wall shattered inward, a rush of stale air bursting out with such force it knocked him to the ground. When the dust settled, Jack raised his lamp and saw what he had uncovered. It was a chamber. A sealed cavern, untouched for centuries. At the center of it stood, her. Suspended in a cocoon of living stone was a girl, no, not human, but close enough that Jack's breath caught in his throat. Her skin glowed faintly, a pale lavender sheen that shimmered like moonlight. Her hair, long and silver white, floated as though she were underwater. Chains of burning runes wrapped around her arms and legs, embedding themselves into her flesh. Her eyes were closed, but her lips moved faintly, as if she were whispering in her sleep. Jack stumbled forward, mesmerized. She looked young, maybe his age, or maybe time meant nothing to her. The chamber hummed with energy, the walls etched with strange sigils that flickered like dying embers. "Who are you?" Jack whispered. The runes on her chains flared suddenly, responding to his voice. The cavern trembled, and before Jack could react, the cocoon cracked apart. The glowing stone shattered into shards that dissolved into mist. The girl collapsed into his arms, warm, breathing, alive. Her eyes fluttered open, golden, luminous, filled with an ancient sorrow. She looked at Jack as though she recognized him, though that was impossible. "You broke the seal," she whispered, her voice like wind across glass. "You freed me." Jack swallowed hard. I didn't mean to. I was just mining. I didn't." But before he could finish, the chamber shook violently. Somewhere deep within the rock, a sound echoed. A signal. A call. Jack didn't know how, but he felt it, something vast and terrible had just been awakened. The girl's gaze darkened. She pushed herself weakly to her feet, chains still clinging to her wrists like shadows. "They will come," she said. "They always do. You have no idea what you've unleashed." Jack's heart hammered in his chest. He didn't know who they were, but he didn't want to find out. He grabbed her arm. "Then we'd better get out of here." The girl tilted her head, studying him with an unreadable expression. Then, slowly, she nodded. Together, they ran, through collapsing tunnels, past walls that cracked and groaned, chased by the echo of something far worse than falling stone. What Jack didn't know was that the moment the seal broke, a pulse of energy had rippled across the stars. Ancient machines woke. Silent sensors lit up. And far above, in the depths of cold space, a syndicate fleet turned its gaze toward the little mining colony, hungry for the power that had just been freed. Jack thought he'd just dug too deep. But he had dug into history. Into war. Into destiny itself. And now, he wasn't alone anymore. Jack half-dragged, half-carried the girl through the twisting tunnels, the ground trembling beneath their feet. The mine wasn't stable anymore. Dust filled his lungs, his lamp flickered, and every sound made him think the ceiling was about to collapse. The girl's breathing was shallow, her steps weak, but there was a determination in her eyes that didn't match her fragile frame. When they reached a wider shaft, Jack slowed, gasping for air. He pressed her against the wall to give her a moment of rest. What the hell just happened down there? Who are you? Her golden eyes studied him, glowing faintly in the dark. My name is Sophie. I was sealed here, a long time ago. She closed her eyes as if pulling up memories buried too deep. I was betrayed, locked away so that my power would never rise again. But now, she looked at him with a strange mix of gratitude and sorrow. Now the seal is broken. They will know. They will come. Jack's gut clenched. They? Who's they? The syndicate, she whispered. Slavers, killers, thieves of power. For centuries they've hunted my kind, and when they finally captured me, they sealed me here, hidden away where no one could find me. But the seal, it was more than a prison. It was a beacon. The moment it shattered, the signal went out. They'll be here soon. Jack cursed under his breath. Great. Just what I needed. Syndicate trouble. He pushed his hair out of his face, staring down the dark tunnel. Listen, I don't know anything about you, or why they want you, but I'm not sticking around for whoever they are. You won't have a choice, Sophie murmured. They will not stop. And now, because you touched the seal, they'll hunt you too. Jack froze, her words hitting him like a pickaxe to the chest. He wanted to argue, wanted to say he could just walk away from all this, but deep down he knew she was right. The syndicate didn't leave witnesses alive. The rumble of shifting rock broke his thoughts. A section of the mine collapsed behind them, sealing off the chamber they had left. No turning back now. By the time they reached the surface, dawn had just begun bleeding across the horizon. The colony was quiet, the streets empty, smoke rising lazily from chimneys. It looked ordinary, almost peaceful, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen had already turned its gaze toward them. He led Sophie through the back alleys to his shack at the edge of town. It wasn't much, just a patched-up metal hut with a single cot, a rickety table, and a heater that barely worked. Sophie stood in the doorway, her luminous skin making the place feel even smaller, almost unreal. Jack shut the door and turned to her. All right. No more vague talk. You need to tell me exactly what you are and why you were buried down there. She hesitated, then sat on the cot, chains rattling softly. I'm not human, though I look like one. My people were called the Elendari. We once guarded the old paths between the stars. We could shape energy, bend it to protect or destroy. It made us powerful. Her golden eyes dimmed. It also made us a target. The syndicate hunted us for generations. They wanted our abilities to control, to enslave. I fought them, but I was betrayed by those I trusted. They sealed me away, ensuring I would never rise again. Jack leaned against the table, trying to process. So you're telling me you're some kind of ancient energy-bending warrior princess? Her lips curved faintly. Not a princess. A soldier. A prisoner. And now, because of you, a fugitive once more. Jack rubbed his temples. Fantastic. Just fantastic. I wanted a better mining haul, not an intergalactic manhunt. Before Sophie could reply, a sharp whistle echoed outside. Jack's blood went cold. That wasn't the sound of neighbors waking up, that was a signal. A warning. He grabbed Sophie's arm and pulled her to the window. Across the colony square, shadows moved, tall figures in armored suits, faces hidden behind masks, rifles gleaming in the pale light. The syndicate had arrived faster than he could have imagined. Sophie's expression hardened. They're here for me. They'll scour this entire colony until they find us. Jack's survival instincts screamed at him to run, to disappear into the hills and leave this nightmare behind. But when he looked at her, fragile yet defiant, golden eyes unblinking as danger closed in, he couldn't turn away. Something deep inside told him that if he abandoned her, it wouldn't just be her life that ended. It would be his chance to matter, to do something more than swing a pickaxe until his body gave out. He clenched his fists. All right, Sophie. If they want you, they're gonna have to get through me first. The first shot rang out, shattering the window. Sophie rose to her feet, energy sparking faintly around her hands, and for the first time, Jack saw a glimpse of what she truly was. The hunt had begun. The window cracked into shards as another shot tore through the wall. Jack ducked low, pulling Sophie with him. His heart pounded so hard he thought the syndicate could hear it through the walls. They weren't wasting time, they were here to kill or capture, and subtlety wasn't their style. Sophie's eyes narrowed, golden light pulsing faintly around her fingers. They won't stop until they take me. You have to decide, Jack, fight or flee. Jack clenched his jaw. Fighting armed syndicate hunters in the middle of his shack wasn't survival, it was suicide. We can't fight them head-on, he hissed. Not here. We need to get to the ridges outside town. There are tunnels through the rocks they won't know about. Sophie nodded once, as if trusting him despite everything. Together, they slipped through the back door just as the front was blasted inward. Jack led her down the narrow alleys, boots crunching on gravel, keeping to the shadows. But the syndicate were thorough. Red scanning beams swept across the streets, hunting, methodical. Move faster, Jack whispered, tugging her hand. They cut behind an old water tower, but a masked figure appeared ahead, weapon raised. Before Jack could even think, Sophie lifted her hand. The air shimmered, then snapped. A burst of golden energy flared from her palm, striking the armored soldier square in the chest. The man flew backward, his rifle clattering to the ground as his body slammed against the wall and went still. Jack stopped dead, staring at her. He had never seen anything like it. Her breathing was ragged, as if even that single attack had cost her, but her eyes blazed with fire. That's just a fraction, she muttered. Remind me never to get on your bad side, Jack muttered, scooping up the fallen rifle. He had handled mining drills and cutters, but syndicate rifles were heavier, meaner, built for war. It felt alien in his hands, but he held it tight anyway. They kept moving, ducking through side paths until the colony's lights faded behind them. The rocky ridges rose ahead, sharp against the morning sky. But before they could reach them, a sound filled the air, a deep, thrumming growl. Jack looked up and cursed. A syndicate dropship hovered above, its belly glowing as it prepared to deploy more soldiers. They've got us cornered, Jack said, despair creeping in. No, Sophie said firmly, though her voice trembled. Not yet. She closed her eyes, raising both hands. The air rippled, golden threads weaving between her fingers like strands of light. With a sudden cry, she thrust them upward. The dropship shuddered midair, its engines whining in protest. For a brief moment, Jack saw the impossible, an entire ship held back by sheer will. Then Sophie gasped, her body giving way, and the ship spun off course, crashing into the far ridge in a thunder of rock and fire. Jack grabbed her before she fell. You're burning yourself out. I told you, she whispered faintly, it's only a fraction. My power, it hasn't returned fully yet. He tightened his grip, dragging her toward the tunnels. Save it for when we really need it. Right now, we run. They slipped into a narrow fissure in the ridge, the heat of the burning wreck behind them. The passage was tight, jagged stones scraping Jack's arms as he pulled Sophie along. They stumbled into an underground cavern that stretched far and deep, the walls glimmering faintly with crystals. It was cooler here, safer, though their breaths echoed too loudly for comfort. Sophie slumped against the wall, her silver hair clinging to her damp skin. The signal went out across the stars. The Syndicate won't be the only ones who heard it. Others will come. Hunters. Opportunists. This galaxy is filled with those who desire power. Jack sat beside her, rifle across his knees. And you're the prize. Her lips curved faintly, though her eyes were sad. Yes. And now, so are you. You touched the seal, Jack. That tethered you to me. They will see you as part of this, whether you want it or not. Jack let out a bitter laugh. All I wanted was a decent mining hull. Instead I bought myself a galaxy of enemies. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint drip of water from the cavern roof. For the first time, Jack looked at her not as a prisoner he had freed, but as someone, fragile. Alone. She had been trapped for centuries, waiting, forgotten. And now she was being hunted again. Finally, he stood. Then we don't give them what they want. You said your people once protected the old star paths. Maybe there's still something out there. Some secret or weapon that can stop them. Sophie's golden eyes met his, searching, uncertain. If you help me, Jack, there will be no going back to your old life. The Syndicate will never stop hunting us. You will lose everything you knew. Jack thought of his shack, his endless days in the mines, the hopeless routine of scraping by. And then he thought of the Syndicate sweeping through the colony, enslaving or killing everyone. His jaw tightened. Then maybe it's time I had something worth losing. For the first time, Sophie smiled, a small, fragile smile, but real. Then we are bound, Jack of the Mines. Together, we may stand a chance. Deep in the tunnels, a metallic clang echoed, faint but drawing closer. The Syndicate hadn't lost them after all. Jack raised the rifle, his grip steady now. Looks like chance is about to knock. The clangs grew louder, boots on stone, metal on rock. Syndicate voices echoed through the tunnels, distorted by their helmets, guttural and harsh. Jack crouched low, rifle aimed toward the passage they had entered from, his finger tight on the trigger. Sophie rose unsteadily beside him, her golden eyes glowing faintly again. Stay behind me, Jack whispered. Her lips curved in the faintest smirk. I think it's you who should stay behind me. Before Jack could reply, a shadow appeared in the cavern mouth. A Syndicate soldier, tall and broad, armored from head to toe, his weapon already raised. Jack fired without hesitation. The shot sizzled through the air, striking the soldier's chest plate. The man stumbled but didn't fall. He roared, charging forward. Sophie lifted her hand, threads of light sparking, but her knees buckled. Jack didn't give her the chance to burn herself out again. He surged forward, jamming the rifle against the soldier's visor and pulling the trigger. The blast tore through, and the Syndicate warrior collapsed with a crash. The echoes didn't fade. More were coming. Jack grabbed Sophie's hand. We need another way out. She closed her eyes, reaching out, not with her hands, but with something deeper. Her voice was quiet, almost trance-like. There's another passage, deeper. But it's not empty. Jack frowned. Not empty. Before she could answer, a scraping growl filled the cavern. From the shadows opposite the Syndicate entry, something massive stirred. A shape unfurled, long limbs, armored hide, eyes that glowed like embers in the dark. It wasn't Syndicate. It was something older. Something that had lived here long before humans ever dug their mines. The beast's head lowered, tusks scraping the ground as it stepped into the faint crystal light. Its breath was hot, thick, and foul. Jack froze. What the hell is that? Sophie's voice trembled with awe. A guardian. The syndicate didn't put me here alone. The seal, it was also bound to this creature. A warden of the cavern. The beast's eyes locked onto Sophie, nostrils flaring as if recognizing her. Then, with a deafening roar, it charged. Jack fired, the rifle's blasts cutting bright streaks across the cavern, but they only scorched the creature's thick hide. Sophie raised her hands, a golden shield sparking into existence just in time to absorb the creature's swipe. The impact knocked her backward, slamming her into the wall. Jack's heart leapt. He ran to her side, pulling her up. Can you control it? She shook her head, pain etched across her face. No. It's not mine to command. It was bound here to destroy anyone who broke the seal. Jack cursed under his breath, glancing between the advancing beast and the syndicate soldiers now spilling into the cavern behind them. They were caught in a deadly trap. And then, a voice boomed through the chaos, deep, rough, yet strangely calm. Move aside, humans. From a crack in the cavern wall, another figure emerged. This one was alien, but not syndicate. His skin was bronze and ridged, his 4 arms carrying strange weapons and tools. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, and filled with irritation. He raised a device that hummed with violent energy and fired at the beast. The blast struck true, staggering it back with a howl. Jack stared. Who the hell are you? The alien didn't even glance at him. Name's Korvac. Scavenger. And you idiots just ruined my quiet. He fired again, forcing the beast into retreat. Now, unless you want your bones decorating this cavern, help me kill it. Jack didn't hesitate. He turned his rifle on the beast, firing shot after shot, while Korvac's strange weapon sliced glowing lines across its hide. Sophie, despite her weakness, raised her hands, weaving her light into sharp lances that struck its joints. The cavern shook with every roar, every blast. The syndicate soldiers caught between the chaos opened fire too, but the beast turned its fury on them, sweeping its tusks and crushing them like ragdolls. At last, after what felt like an eternity, Sophie summoned her strength for one final strike. Her light flared brighter than ever, lancing through the beast's chest. With a final, agonized roar, it collapsed into the crystal floor, shattering rock and scattering dust. Silence followed. Jack collapsed onto one knee, chest heaving, ears ringing. Sophie sagged against the wall, drained but alive. Korvac lowered his weapon, eyeing them both with annoyance. You, he growled, pointing one of his arms at Sophie. You're the signal. The one who woke half the galaxy. His gaze flicked to Jack. And you're the fool who broke the seal. Jack tightened his grip on the rifle. You're not syndicate. What do you want? Korvac smirked, showing rows of sharp teeth. What every scavenger wants. Opportunity. You've just painted a target on your backs the size of a starship. Which means where you go, trouble follows. And where trouble goes, his grin widened. Profit follows. Jack narrowed his eyes. So you're here to sell us out? Korvac shrugged, all 4 arms lifting casually. Not yet. The syndicate will keep coming. Hunters, mercenaries, worse. Alone, you'll die. With me, maybe you survive long enough to make it interesting. Sophie's gaze locked on Korvac, sharp despite her exhaustion. I don't trust scavengers. Korvac chuckled. Good. That means you might live. Jack exhaled slowly, his mind racing. They had no allies, no safe place to run, and an entire galaxy closing in on them. And now, a scavenger with questionable motives stood offering his help. He looked at Sophie, then back at Korvac. Fine. We'll hear you out. But one wrong move, he raised the rifle. And you'll find out humans aren't as easy to kill as you think. Korvac's grin only widened. I like you, miner. Let's see how long you last. Korvac moved with surprising speed for someone carrying 4 bulky weapons. His bronze skin shimmered in the crystal light as he scanned the cavern's walls, clearly searching for a way out. Jack kept the rifle raised on him, but part of him knew they didn't have the luxury of refusing help. The syndicate weren't far behind. Sophie leaned heavily against the wall, her golden eyes dimmer now, as though the battle had drained most of her remaining strength. Jack steadied her with one arm, glaring at Korvac. You'd better know a way out of here, scavenger. Korvac snorted. I know 100 ways out of places like this. The real question is, will you live long enough to follow me? Jack's jaw tightened. Try me. Without another word, Korvac pried open a crack in the cavern wall with one of his tools, revealing a narrow tunnel that sloped upward. This way. The syndicate don't know these passages. I've mapped half this rock over the years. Comes with being a professional who actually prepares for trouble, unlike you miners. Jack helped Sophie forward, her steps unsteady but determined. They entered the tunnel, the air tighter and colder here. Jack could hear faint tremors in the rock, the syndicate spreading through the mine like ants. Every few moments, Sophie would glance behind them, as if she could feel the hunters closing in. At last, the tunnel opened into a hollow chamber filled with Korvac's stash. Crates piled high, scavenged tech stacked along the walls, and a small hover skiff half buried in crystal dust. Jack blinked. You've been living down here? Korvac grinned with all his teeth. Not living. Thriving. While you humans break your backs for scraps, I pull treasure from under your noses. He tapped one of the crates proudly. Syndicate rifles, black market medkits, rations from 5 different worlds. Everything you need to survive. His grin faded slightly as his eyes shifted to Sophie. But with her around, surviving's going to take more than crates. Sophie straightened, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. Her voice was quiet but firm. You're right. The syndicate won't stop. Not with me free. They'll burn this colony to ash if it means finding me. She turned to Jack, golden eyes searching his face. You have a choice, Jack. Stay here and fight for scraps, or come with me. If we reach the ruins of my people, I can awaken what was lost. Something strong enough to stop them. Korvac tilted his head, intrigued. Ruins of the Elendari, eh? I've heard rumors. Relics, ancient tech, power cores. That's the kind of prize scavengers dream about. Jack tightened his grip on the rifle. Ruins or not, we don't have another option. If what's in there can stop the syndicate, then we go. Korvac chuckled. You're braver than you look, miner. Or stupider. Jack shot him a glare. Maybe both. Before Korvac could reply, the chamber shook violently. Rocks tumbled from above, and a muffled boom echoed through the tunnels. Sophie's eyes widened. They're collapsing the mine. Korvac's grin faded. They want to bury us alive. Jack turned toward the skiff. Then we don't give them the chance. Can that thing run? Korvac's 4 hands moved in a blur, flipping switches and yanking cables. The skiff whined, sputtered, then roared to life, its small thrusters glowing faintly. It'll fly. Barely. Sophie climbed aboard with Jack's help, settling into the narrow bench seat. Jack swung the rifle onto his back and climbed in beside her. Korvac leapt into the pilot's seat, his lower arms gripping the controls while his upper pair grabbed weapons. Hold on tight, little humans. The skiff blasted forward, the cavern walls streaking past in a blur. Jack clung to Sophie as the tunnels whipped by, each twist and turn threatening to smash them into stone. Syndicate fire rained from behind, bolts ricocheting off the walls, but Korvac zigzagged with reckless precision, returning fire with one of his strange rifles. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, the skiff burst from the mouth of the mine into the open air. The colony stretched below, smoke rising from several burning buildings. Syndicate dropships patrolled the skies, their searchlights cutting through the morning haze. Jack's stomach dropped. They're everywhere. Korvac bared his teeth. Then we don't go through them. We go under. He yanked a lever, and the skiff dove sharply, skimming along the rocky gullies that stretched toward the desert beyond. The syndicate ships were too large to follow this low, those smaller crafts quickly gave chase. Sophie leaned against Jack, her breathing shallow. They won't stop. They'll follow us across every star. Jack wrapped his arm around her, steadying her against the jolting skiff. Then let them. We'll just keep running until we find what we need. Korvac glanced at them, something unreadable flickering in his sharp eyes. You two have no idea what you're stepping into. But I'll admit. I'm curious to see how far you'll get. Behind them, the syndicate ships loomed like predators. Ahead, the endless desert stretched toward a horizon of jagged ruins glimmering faintly in the distance. Sophie's golden eyes fixed on them. That's where we must go. The ruins of Elendar. The beginning, and the end. The desert stretched like an ocean of stone and dust, the skiff cutting through it with a low hum. Heat shimmered in the air, even though the morning had barely begun. Jack's eyes never left the horizon, where broken towers jutted out of the sand like bones of a fallen giant. The ruins of Elendar. They looked older than anything he had ever seen, almost alive in the way the light clung to their jagged edges. Sophie sat upright now, though Jack could still see the weariness in her face. Her golden eyes were fixed on those ruins, a mix of longing and dread flickering in their glow. It's still here, she murmured. I wasn't sure, after all this time. Korvac snorted, his 4 arms busy steering the skiff and keeping weapons primed. Old rubble in the sand. You Elendari always thought your monuments would last forever. Everything crumbles. Sophie's voice turned sharp. Not everything. Jack leaned forward. What's in there, Sophie? You said we might find something strong enough to stop the syndicate. What exactly are we walking into? She hesitated, her fingers curling against her knees as if clutching memories. My people built guardians, not just of flesh and blood, but of energy, bound to the heart of our cities. Weapons, shields, knowledge beyond what the syndicate could ever grasp. If even a fragment remains in those ruins, we may find something powerful enough to drive them back. Jack exhaled slowly. He wanted to believe her. He had to. Before he could reply, Korvac's upper arm swung around, loosing a barrage of plasma fire at the sky. A syndicate scout craft had spotted them, swooping low and fast. Bolts of energy tore into the sand around the skiff, throwing up showers of dust. Jack grabbed the side rail as the skiff jerked violently. We've got company. Korvac's grin was wild, almost feral. About time. I was getting bored. He veered sharply, weaving between stone pillars rising from the desert floor. The scout craft followed, its cannons lighting up the gullies. Sophie raised her hands, golden sparks flickering between her fingers, but Jack caught her wrists gently. Don't. You'll burn yourself out again. Her gaze locked on his, stubborn but soft. Then what do you suggest? Jack looked at the syndicate rifle slung across his back. He pulled it free, braced against the skiff's side, and took aim. The scout dove lower, its shadow passing over them. Jack squeezed the trigger, the rifle kicking against his shoulder as a burst of plasma fire streaked upward. The shot struck the craft's wing, sending it lurching off balance. Korvac hooped and swung the skiff out of the way as the scout crashed into a sand dune in a plume of fire. Jack slumped back, chest heaving. Got it. Korvac barked a laugh. Not bad for a miner. Sophie's lips curved in the faintest smile. Maybe you're more than that now. They rode hard for another hour, until at last the ruins loomed high above them. The towers were half buried, the stone etched with glowing veins that pulsed faintly even after centuries. Strange symbols covered the walls, alien and haunting. The air here was heavy, charged, like standing at the edge of a storm. As the skiff slowed to a stop, Sophie stepped off first, her bare feet sinking into the sand. Her golden eyes widened as she touched the base of one broken tower, her fingers trailing across the symbols. They glowed faintly beneath her touch. "This place remembers," she whispered. "It still knows me." Jack climbed down beside her, rifle ready, scanning the horizon. The desert was too quiet, and that silence set his nerves on edge. If this place still works, then maybe the Syndicate knows about it too. "They'll follow us here." "They already have," Korvac said grimly, pointing with his upper hand. Jack turned. On the horizon, Syndicate dropships were cutting across the desert sky, their engines burning bright. Sophie's face hardened. "Then we must wake the heart before they reach us." She pressed her palm against the stone, whispering words in a language Jack didn't know. The ruins shuddered, the ground trembling beneath their feet as hidden mechanisms stirred to life. The sand around them shifted, collapsing inward to reveal a staircase descending into darkness. Cold air rushed up from below, carrying the scent of something ancient. Jack tightened his grip on the rifle. "Here we go again." Sophie stepped onto the stairs, her chains clinking softly, and looked back at him. "Once we enter, there is no turning back." Jack managed a wry grin. "Wasn't planning on it." Korvac muttered under his breath but followed anyway, his weapons drawn. As they descended, the light of the desert faded, swallowed by the glow of the ruin's heart. Walls carved with Elendari script surrounded them, their symbols alive with faint golden fire. The deeper they went, the stronger the hum in the air became, until Jack's skin prickled with raw energy. At last, they stepped into a vast underground hall. At its center stood a towering crystal, cracked but still pulsing faintly with light. It was surrounded by ancient machines, broken but still humming, as though waiting for someone to wake them. Sophie's eyes shone brighter than ever. "The heart of Elendar. It still lives." Jack took a step closer, awe washing over him. "Can it really stop the Syndicate?" Sophie placed both hands against the crystal, golden energy flowing from her into it. The heart responded, its glow strengthening, sending ripples of light across the hall. Machines stirred, broken limbs twitching back to life. Her voice was steady, almost solemn. "With this, we can call the Guardians. But it will cost me." The Elendari bound their lives to these hearts. To awaken it fully, I must give a part of myself. Jack's chest tightened. "What does that mean?" She turned, her eyes meeting his. "It means when the time comes, you must be ready to let me go." Before Jack could answer, the sound of Syndicate engines roared overhead. Dust rained down from the ceiling as dropships descended onto the ruins above. The hunters had arrived. And the battle for the heart was about to begin. The first explosion shook the chamber like thunder. Dust poured down from the ceiling as Syndicate shock troops stormed the staircase, their weapons glowing in the dim light. The crystal heart pulsed brighter with every tremor, as though aware of the danger pressing in. Jack spun toward the steps, rifle raised. "They're here." Korvac roared, his massive frame charging forward with 4 guns blazing. Plasma bolts filled the air, striking Syndicate soldiers as they poured into the chamber. Sparks flew as alien armor cracked and burned, the smell of scorched metal mixing with the dust. Sophie didn't flinch. She pressed harder against the crystal, her golden energy flowing faster, feeding the heart. Light spread along the floor, veins of power racing toward the walls as ancient Elendari machines awakened. Broken statues groaned and shifted, their stone skin crumbling away to reveal shimmering constructs of energy and steel beneath. "Guardians! Jack!" Sophie cried, her voice trembling from the strain. "Keep them back. I need more time. Jack fired until his rifle overheated, dropping it and grabbing another from a fallen Syndicate soldier. He fought shoulder to shoulder with Korvac, who laughed like a madman as he cut down enemy after enemy. Still, the Syndicate kept coming, mercenaries, hunters, machines of war. The chamber became a storm of chaos. Beams of energy scorched the air. Syndicate troopers rushed the crystal, only to be torn apart by Korvac's fury or Jack's desperate fire. One nearly reached Sophie, but Jack hurled himself across the floor, tackling the alien before it could strike her. "Don't you touch her," he snarled, driving his knife into the soldier's throat. Sophie gasped, her glow flickering. The runes on her chains were breaking apart, dissolving into golden sparks as if the heart itself was unbinding her. Her voice wavered. "Jack, it's almost ready." But above them, the Syndicate commander arrived. A towering figure in jagged armor descended into the chamber, his presence suffocating. His face was hidden by a mask of metal, his voice a distorted growl. "Do you know what you've done, Miner?" he thundered. "You've unleashed something your species cannot control. She belongs to us. Hand her over, and I'll let you die quickly." Jack stepped in front of Sophie, his chest heaving, weapon shaking in his hands. "She's not yours. Not anymore." The commander raised a massive blade that crackled with dark energy. "Then you will burn with her." Before he could strike, the heart flared with blinding light. Sophie screamed, but it wasn't pain, it was release. Her chains shattered, exploding into golden shards that dissolved into the air. Her body lifted from the ground, energy pouring through her veins like fire and starlight combined. The Guardians awakened fully, towering constructs of shimmering energy rising from the floor. Their eyes glowed like suns, their bodies thrumming with power. They turned toward the Syndicate soldiers and unleashed beams of searing light that tore through the invaders like paper. The commander staggered, shielding his face from the blast. Impossible. Sophie descended slowly, her eyes glowing with a power that seemed to come from the very heart itself. She looked at Jack, her voice now both her own and something more, something ancient. "It is done. The heart is awake." Jack's throat tightened. "What happens now?" She glanced toward the Syndicate forces still pushing into the chamber, then back at him. "Now, I end this." Her hands rose, golden fire erupting from her palms. The Guardians joined her, unleashing devastation on the Syndicate. Walls shook, the ceiling cracked, and the commander howled in fury as he charged at her. Jack saw it in an instant. If she stayed, she would destroy them, but the heart would take her life in the process. He grabbed her arm. "Sophie, wait. You don't have to sacrifice yourself." Her eyes softened, the glow dimming just for him. "If I don't, the galaxy will never be free of them. This is what I was meant for." "No," Jack whispered, shaking his head fiercely. "You were meant for more than chains and sacrifice. You were meant to live." For a heartbeat, the chamber froze. The commander lunged. Korvac tackled him, both of them crashing into the floor in a tangle of blades and fury. Sophie stared at Jack, tears of golden light slipping down her cheeks. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Together then. If I must carry this power, let me carry it with you." She drew him close, pressing her forehead to his. The heart responded, its light splitting into two streams, one flowing into Sophie, the other into Jack. Pain seared through him, but it was more than pain. It was energy, strength, something vast and endless pouring into his very bones. When he opened his eyes again, they glowed faintly with the same golden fire as hers. The commander staggered back, his mask cracked, his voice trembling with fear. "No, not a human, it's not possible." Jack and Sophie raised their hands together, golden light surging out in a wave that tore through the chamber. The Syndicate forces screamed as they were obliterated, their ships above shattering in midair. The commander was the last to fall, his body disintegrating into ash as the wave consumed him. Then silence. The guardians stood still, their forms flickering, before slowly lowering their heads in reverence. The heart dimmed, its work done. Jack collapsed to his knees, gasping. Sophie knelt beside him, her glow softer now, more human. She touched his face, her chains gone, her voice trembling with emotion. You shouldn't have done that. Sharing the heart's power, it could burn you alive. He managed a weary smile. Guess miners are tougher than we look. For the first time, she laughed, a sound like music in the hollow ruins. Perhaps so. Korvac limped toward them, battered but grinning. Well, human, alien, whatever you two are now. That was one hell of a fight. Jack glanced at Sophie, then back at the ruins around them. The desert was quiet again, the syndicate destroyed, at least for now. But he knew this was only the beginning. He reached for Sophie's hand, their fingers intertwining. Whatever comes next, we face it together. And for the first time since he picked up a miner's drill and struck something far older than stone, Jack felt like maybe, just maybe, the galaxy wasn't as hopeless as it seemed. Because now, it wasn't just humanity or Elendari. It was both. Together.